Wednesday of Wisdom Podcast. I told you we would run it back for part two, but this time we got my husband here, their son, Mr. Rashad, and we have once again.
It's Oscar proud today.
See, guys, this is what I do on a daily basis. And then we have once again my lovely in-laws, Mrs. Tarsha Smith and Mr. Jimmy Smith. So thank you once again for joining us.
It's B period.
B period. B
Thank
period.
you.
There you
Appreciate
go.
that.
Go ahead and while you guys are here, subscribe to all of our channels, A Brotherhood Podcast, The Adoption Journey.
It's a Brotherhood Questions.
Thank you again. I appreciate that.
You want a cookie?
An Oreo.
An Oreo. Okay, I got one of those for you. All right, guys. So today, part two, we're talking about all things marriage because marriage is fun. But what else is marriage? So you guys have how many years into the marriage game?
Word.
Almost 19. It'll be 19 in December.
Almost 19 years, and we're almost 3. So you guys
I
got.
feel like I'm 19 years old. Like, that's crazy.
You feel 19 years old?
That's how I feel. They've been married as long as I've been alive, bro.
Okay. All right. I don't think you did your math correctly there.
Don't worry about that.
All right. So we finished off with dating, and now we're transitioning from dating to marriage. How was the transition? Those first few months, that first year from dating to marriage. How was that for you guys?
Can we backtrack? As a matter of fact,
Okay.
I want to know what the first few weeks were
Okay.
when you knew that okay, we're transitioning from dating to marriage.
When you felt it?
Yeah. What were
Okay.
the first couple of weeks where, let's say, leading up to dad actually giving you the card and saying, "Hey, will you marry me?"
Oh, okay. You're
I'm
saying
telling my
when
story.
you're saying
But,
when dad knew that
yeah.
he was ready for marriage. Okay,
yeah,
I like
when
that. I
did,
like
when
that.
did dad what were the first couple of weeks where dad kind of shifted in his mindset and was like, "Man, let me go ahead and just."
Okay, I like that question.
And then we can answer the question that
Yes,
she
yes,
asked.
yes, yes. You're good job, babe.
Go ahead. Start with that. That's a matter of fact. Start with that.
You guys are expecting a lot of my memory here.
Believe in you.
Let's see.
Believe in me.
I don't necessarily know that I remember the first couple of weeks
Okay.
per se. I would say that when I made the decision, I would say nervousness, uncertainty, fear. I would think those were probably, I would describe the emotions that were going through. But I think ultimately what caused it to happen was probably at some point, I guess I just decided that this is what I wanted. And so if I wanted it, I might as well just go ahead and
Put a ring on it. Oh.
I don't know about all that. But I decided to go ahead and make it official. That's what I would say. But the emotions, those were probably the emotions that I felt at the time.
Actually, no. I was hoping that it, say it again. No, that's what I'm saying. We had talked about it, like this is what we want to do, but when he proposed, if that's what you're meaning, no, that I was caught off guard. I didn't know that was getting ready to happen when he did it. But we had talked about it, so we knew we were going into that direction. But he always told me that he would never do it on a holiday because that was too cliche. So it was literally like we did actually, didn't we?
We did what?
We got married on a holiday.
We did get married.
But he always told me he would never propose on a holiday. So it was literally like a random Tuesday.
Okay. Okay, so now we're going to get to the part where we're married. those highs from the wedding night are kind of wearing off just a little bit. You're still in your honeymoon phase, right? But you know that you're entering the real world with this marriage. Like it's for real, for real. How was that transition for you guys?
Okay, so this is what I
No.
did.
I want Dad to answer first.
Let her answer.
Let Dad answer first.
And it's B period.
Let her answer
not
first.
Dad.
Now I want B period to answer first.
Sir, this is about your podcast.
I'm sorry.
You're gonna not get invited back. I've already not. I can't go back on.
I'm always invited.
Okay.
So
So what happened?
I can say that I went into the marriage with the ideas because I had watched my parents. And at this point in the game, my parents have been married for 54 years.
Mm.
So I grew up watching my parents. So this was my idea of marriage. And so I tried to take those same ideas into my own marriage and found out very quickly, yeah, that's what worked for them is not going to work for us. But it's not like I went, oh, okay, this isn't working, and then moved on. No, I had to go through some frustration first because I'm like, why is he not listening? This is what it's supposed to be. Listen to me.
Listen to
Yeah, listen to me.
What would you say?
The first few weeks after, I always say you're on a high, but very quickly you realize that this is real, if you will, and that like she said, you realize that you're gonna have to find a balance really quickly. And for us, I would say that balance, it took time to figure out the
For
balance
sure.
because uh, she's very hard headed. I mean, let's just be honest. And so as a result, all she, all she wanted was what she wanted. And she
Because
didn't
I
want to hear
thought,
anything else. And so that was a big struggle for us because it took her a while to realize that you had this fantasy and we're not in the fantasy anymore.
well, I wouldn't call
We're
it
in
a
reality.
fantasy. I
I'm
would
gonna
call
it a
it,
fantasy.
well, that was my reality of what I grew up seeing. So I don't think it was a fantasy. I think that's
It was
just what I thought marriage.
Yes, we had that conversation just recently, and that episode should be out by now by the time they see this one. But it was different for us because he saw you guys go from dating to marriage. So he saw that transition. So he didn't go in with the same rosy shade glasses that I had because he saw the hard work that you guys had to put in.
Oh,
Versus
did you?
me, I was
Wait
two.
for the episode to come out.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about it.
Um,
I'll tell you about it.
we can talk about it. But for me, my parents, I was two when my parents got married. So I didn't see the transition. Marriage was just all that I knew. And what I just kind of like you, I went in thinking this is the way. And he went in thinking, nah, like we got to put in some work. And it's going to be real ugly before it gets pretty. So he had a realistic view on marriage. Not saying that I didn't, but I thought it would be a little bit easier because I didn't see the hard work because of that transition that he got to see. So what would you?
It's not saying that it has to be ugly per se, but what I said in the episode was realistically speaking, these are two separate personalities that are trying to merge into one, and there's going to be pushback from either side, and so it's not necessarily that it has to be no. It's not that it has to be ugly, but there is going to be a fight and there's going to be some work that has to be done before we find that common ground. And that's not going to be an immediate thing, but that is going to be a little bit down the line.
So let me ask you, what for you was that what were those first transition weeks for in our marriage?
Exactly what I said.
Did you?
I knew going into it, I
Right.
was like, hey man, the honeymoon was gonna be the second honeymoon
The second
was
honeymoon.
great.
Second
The
honeymoon.
first honeymoon, that was when we realized I had some stomach problems. But the second honeymoon, that was great.
Mhm.
That was fire. That was absolutely amazing.
Okay.
Yeah, my parents.
And then you come home.
And then you come home.
And then you
there's 2 dogs, and then there's 2 kids, and then there's friends that you gotta contend with, and then there's COVID that's still going on. Nobody's working. I still
Yeah.
bills still coming in.
So that's
My
bills.
landlord,
That's what I want.
my landlord still want his rent.
Okay.
So
So that's what we want to kind of go to next, right? So very early on, we could see that finances is really big in marriage. Like you kind of glance over and kind of talk about it a little bit in dating, but when you go negative, your spouse gets to see that. So how did you guys deal with those hardships when finances come, or if you could give us some tips for us going through those phases, like what would that be?
I want Pops to answer first.
Oh my gosh. B period, please.
I would say, that was probably one of the bigger challenges for us. And a lot of that had to do with what her ideals were at the time. Again, she was a bit, she lived in a fantasy world for quite some time.
Fantasy.
And then she got out of her fantasy eventually. But so because of that, there were some challenges initially. The thing that I would say is number one, you have to have an honest conversation. And honestly, that honest conversation should happen even before you walk down the aisle. About you know obviously where you are from a financial perspective in terms of what you make, what she makes, or however that works.
Now hold
And-
on.
and
Wait,
hold
wait.
on.
No. I'm gonna stop him because while that conversation should be had, we did, I knew what he made, he knew what I made, whatever. But we didn't I don't recall. We didn't have that honest conversation about money and how you should manage money. I yet again went in with what my mother had always told me, how you should handle finances as a married couple. And of course, she's telling me what they did. And so we tried that. That didn't work for us.
Well, not only that, but I would even go so far though, and not having a money conversation about that, but then take it a step further and have a financial philosophy conversation as well. And I think that's one of those conversations that we tend not to have in general, is we don't have a philosophy conversation. So not only how much you make, but what do you think? What do you think about saving? What do you think about investing? What do you think about living beneath our means? These type of conversations, I think, are the conversations we should be having that we typically skip until we get into it, and then we come into it with these ideals, and then you quickly realize that the ideal isn't what's going to be working for us based on where we are financially.
But wait, I have a question for B period. Because he also grew up seeing marriage because his parents, how long were they married before Dad died?
40 something years.
Okay, so he saw it too. Are you telling me I'm the only one that came into the marriage with an idea? You didn't have an idea based on what you saw?
Honestly, I didn't have. I don't really know how my parents handle finances.
Well,
to be
not
honest with you.
finances, just coming into the
So-
marriage, just
So what I would
period.
say is, coming into the marriage, there's my expectation had more to do with trying to live to a point where I wasn't spending everything I made, and that was the philosophy that I was trying to work with. And so that's what I would say. But how to quote unquote handle it, I don't. He didn't really have. I didn't really have that conversation with him that I can recall to say I came into it thinking it had to be this way. So I was open to an idea, but my bigger idea was that I was trying to figure out how to live without having to spend everything I made.
So let me ask, because I know your parents were of that generation where gender roles were huge. And what the man of the house does, what the woman of the house does. How did that affect you going into marriage? Did you kind of try to shy away from gender role kind of things where it's like, I'm the man of the house, what I'm saying is going for finances? Or was it more of an open line communication with what was
For
allowed?
me, I would say I wasn't necessarily specifically about gender roles.
Okay.
Um, that was never my thing. I said I felt like we should play the part where we best fit.
Mm.
You know, so from a cooking perspective, when we first got together, she didn't know how to cook. So,
Don't do me.
If
Don't do
so
me. Rashad,
she can
there's
follow
proof right there that could, because it's one of my children right
he
there.
could follow
He just-
instructions.
He just
but,
said you couldn't.
without
she didn't know how to
all
cook.
the work
Don't-
that
She
goes
didn't learn how
to
to cook
me.
until much later.
Don't
But
do me.
so I didn't mind. It didn't bother me per se to do most of the cooking when we were
all
cooking.
of the cooking.
I don't know. It was like I said, it was definitely most.
But I will
Especially in the
say
beginning.
this. I will say this.
And then it was most of the cooking, and then it fell to me. But you know, mom was kind of she supervised
Mm.
incorrectly, but she was there. So
You gonna let him talk about you like that?
You know what? You can exit.
So,
Exit.
so getting back to the question,
Right, please.
gender roles were not necessarily this thing that for me I had to harp. I was going to do this, you were going to do that. I was more interested in discussing what did you do better, what did I do better, and then we could share in those responsibilities based on where you shined and I excelled and so forth.
For sure.
So if you got some, go ahead, Mom.
Oh, I was just gonna say, ladies,
Mm-hmm.
when you are praying for your husband, be very, very detailed about your prayer, because while I did cook, I admit it's something that I never enjoyed doing. That didn't come until much later when I became plant-based a few years ago. Now I love cooking, but I prayed for a husband that could cook and loved to cook, and I got just that. And so even today people say, well, how do you guys handle, because we eat differently, how do you handle that? Well, he cooks what he wants and I'll cook what I want, and then Bryce kind of falls somewhere in the middle. So the only thing I didn't want to do as far as gender roles, I was sick of taking out the trash. And
Yeah,
so
I
I
don't-
did get a husband, and I did have boys. Rashad, y'all wasn't able to take out the trash always. I was a single mom and I had to take out the trash when y'all were little. Stop looking like that. When you got old enough to do so, yes. But you weren't always old enough to do so.
And then even when I wasn't old,
Anywho,
okay,
yeah,
well, I guess I
because
wasn't
he'll just keep
so-
going about the childhood trauma that
It's
he
not
got.
childhood trauma. It's a simple task. Just grab the trash bag and throw it in the
It
dumpster.
seems
Why are you
like you're
so
talking.
evil about
It seems like you're talking to somebody else at this point. Oh, okay. So let's say this now, because we've realized how we have truly realized how important communication is in a marriage, and not just communication but comprehension. So there's times where he can talk to me and I'm not understanding because he has this way of being on this super high level, and I'm like, I need you to come back down for a little bit.
I don't know him.
But communicate. Oh, I could tell.
I don't know him.
But communication for us, we had to sit down and have that conversation that lasted for a while, and it was like, this is just it. I can't sugarcoat my feelings and you can't sugarcoat yours, but in order for us to be a cohesive unit, we have to understand each other. How would you say communication works best in a marriage? What were the struggles with communication and how did you overcome those struggles?
I think that came with growing into each other and learning each other. I had those same challenges with B period early on. I'm like, you are talking way up here. I don't know. I'm not comprehending. I don't know. But he would say, well, I said this and it should be very easy. What I said, I'm sure Rashad says the same thing to you. I said this and it's just that. And I'm like, okay, that might have been what you said, but that's not how I comprehended. And
Yeah.
it was a whole thing. It was a whole thing for a little bit. But I would say fast forward now, I think it just comes more because I think we're definitely closer now than we were back then. Our relationship looks very different. And that's where that friendship part comes in. Always being friends, because at the end of the day, I want to understand him, and I'm sure do you want to understand me?
Sure. Go with that.
And so, but that, I think that also ties into that. And so I don't even know how to pinpoint that. I think just learning each other and being patient with each other and work. So I can definitely say we communicate a lot better now than once upon a time, for sure.
I mean, communication is the key. One of the things that we had to learn, and it took a while to learn this, is number one, how to communicate with each other.
Mm.
And so I would say, if I'm being, truly honest and open here, I mean, it literally took years to truly understand how to communicate with one another to a point where people were hearing what you said and not giving you their emotions, if you will. If that makes sense? Because a lot of times, one of the things that people do is we hear things and then we respond based on how we emotionally feel about what we heard, not what we heard, if that makes sense. And that's a challenge in communication, because I'm no longer responding to what I said. I'm responding to the interpretation that you had of what I said. And truth be told, I can't be responsible for your interpretation. I can only be responsible for what I said. And so again, that took years of communication to be able to get to that point. Like she said, at this point, it is 1,000 times better in terms of what it was and then where we are now. But it's a constant process that I think you have to be prepared to recognize that they're gonna be, maybe it won't be years in your case. I don't pray that upon anybody, because that's a struggle. But it might be months before you truly start to communicate, or maybe before you hear the point that was trying to be made. It might be years, like it was in our case. The thing that I think you have to hold on to when you're talking about marriage is that it's a marathon. And so you don't win the marathon tomorrow, right? You win the marathon at the end of the marathon. And so, as long as the two of you are breathing and as long as the two of you are still alive, you're running the marathon. And so, don't get so frustrated in the middle sometimes that you forget that the marathon hasn't ended yet.
Little child, because you could forget sometimes.
And you just have to kind of keep going and keep working on that thing until you get it right.
So, funny story. And this will speak to like where you start when you have two individuals, especially in this day and age when you're older. The people, what am I trying to say? People that are getting married are a little bit older, more like 30-ish now, more so than 20-ish. And when you have two individuals that's so used to living their own lives and doing their own things, and then they're trying to come together. So when we first got married, B period, and I would get up roughly about the same time in the morning. But he would have to leave a little before me because he had further to go in his commute. And he would just leave. And I would be like, did the door just close? Did he just leave? And I would look out the window and he'd be backing out. He was accustomed to doing that because we weren't married. And so he was he was living at his mom's house at the time. So he would just go to work. And we're like fresh off our honeymoon. And he's just out the door. Growth. And I would be like, did you just and it's not even about giving a hug or a kiss, and I know some people are really, really big on that, but it's just about just say bye. Just say, I'm gone. Have a good day. Don't let me don't let me know that you left the house because I've heard the door close.
The echo is going through that. What do you think of that? Because you're pointing fingers.
That you're pretty big on that.
It's not even oh, okay. You know what? Sure.
That you're pretty big on that.
And Sierra, if you're and that's fine.
I know it is.
Own that.
However, he wants to downplay the fact that if I walk out the house, he'll call me. Did you just leave the house without?
That was something that I had to I had to get on her level with, but then there are times where she'll leave without saying anything. And I'm like, okay, I've matured to this level, and now here you are pulling an old school Rashad. If you don't get back in this house, and say
you were leaving the house and not even saying anything, Rashad?
I would be like, "I deuces," and then I was like,
because nature versus nurture is so real.
Oh my God, I didn't know you were doing that.
I was better than him. I wouldn't slam the door on my way out. But I would be like, all right, y'all, I'm going to get up with you. And then, and then I would dip. But
you sound like you're talking to your boys.
I'm talking to him.
But that even
right there,
but
the guy in the white hat.
But that even went down to like the kids, because for a while, like especially our Elias, like he is very lovey-dovey. Like, give me all the kisses, give me all the hugs, and Rashad would be like, "Bro, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Just love on." It's okay for a father to love his son. And now that's all they like. He'll like, "Night, kiss, hug," and he's comfortable with this now. But it did take a while.
See what you did.
These are facts.
You know what? I'm not even debating that with you.
You can't prove this in a court of law.
Elias, wake up. Come.
If Elias were to walk out here right now,
you'd be like, kiss, hug.
That's exactly what he's saying.
Kiss and hugs.
Kiss, hug.
Kiss and hugs.
Kiss and hugs every night. So with communication, it's hard work. Marriage is hard work. And if you don't want to change, we say, we don't think you're necessarily ready for marriage. What are the necessary things to do before marriage to know that you're ready to enter marriage?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think you're ever really prepared for marriage. I think the only thing you have to do, and the only preparation you can do, is recognize what it means to be married. So it truly it means that once I say I do, this is my person. And so I'm going to love that person sometimes. I'm going to hate that person sometimes. I'm going to dislike that person sometimes. But this is my person. And so as this is my person, I'm going to, again, it's a marathon, right? We're going to run this marathon together until death do us part. And so if you don't want to have that mindset, I would encourage you to wait until you do. But be prepared for what it is. Nobody's prepared for what it is until you get in it, and then you realize, because
he crazy.
There's we can talk about crazy, but we ain't gonna go there today.
Go there.
There's nothing though. I don't think there's mentally anything you can do that's gonna prepare you, because ultimately, you have to realize that everybody's journey is gonna be different, and so there's gonna be journeys that have a lot of struggle, and then they'll win in the end. There's going to be journeys that don't struggle, or struggle very little anyway. And so there's no perfect way to do this. You just have to be committed to the person that you're going to choose, and then be ready and if you will, enjoy the ride that the two of you are going to take, realizing that you're going to run a marathon together. And that marathon may start off rocky because you didn't really train in the first place. And then as you get into it, You're going to find that you're able to keep a better pace. And by the time you're done with it, you're going to find that you can run it with no problems. So but you got to be prepared for the marathon. And the other thing, one thing you can do is stop living in the fantasy. You can do that, right? Because there are no Disney princess. Disney princesses are movies. They're not realities. So there's no Prince Charming coming to kiss you and wake you up. And then
Wait, what'd you say, Rashad?
so there are no Disney
Oh, 'cause I'm-
princesses. And then number two, what your parents did may not be what you need to do.
For sure.
And so take
For
off.
sure.
So your winning strategy is going to be to take off your fantasy blinders and live in the reality of what you and the person you chose are living in, and be happy that the two of you are together and working through it. And don't let other people tell you what your problem is. Keep other people out your situation, because your situation ain't their situation. And and most people who tell you are usually not the ones who stayed together.
Yeah.
They're the ones who got divorced, and so they're telling you about their experience about how they got divorced. Well, that divorce is a decision. It's not what you have to do, because everybody is not in a situation that was abusive and all of that. Most people who get divorced are just stop liking each other, and I
stop
think
doing the work.
and in any marriage you're gonna stop liking that person. It's gonna happen. Okay, it's gonna happen. There's gonna be a point where you're gonna stop liking them, and if you don't, y'all ain't really married yet.
For sure.
So y'all need to wake up and get to the reality
Get
of
to
the
the reality.
situation.
Stop liking each other for a hot second.
Because love is an emotion. It's not what keeps you married. Commitments keep you married. And so, those are the things that I would say. But the fantasy blinders got to go. The comparisons got to go, and live in the moment of what you and the person you chose create, and enjoy the ride, because it will be rocky, but it's a marathon. And marathons, the more you train at them, the better you get. And by the time you train for long enough, it's going to seem like a breeze.
So I have two more points that I really want to hit on. If we can keep it brief, if not, I'm cool at exploring them. One, do you guys remember a point in your marriage where it felt like the lowest of lows, where it felt like the D word may been an option because you ain't see no sunshine?
What's the deal?
The D word.
Absolutely.
Oh, I was like,
So how did you overcome that? What did you guys have to do? I know it's going to be work. I know that. But what was the turning factor for you guys to make your marriage better than what it was in that lowest valley?
You want me to answer the question?
Yes.
she looked at him. What that mean?
I mean, do you get to that point? Yes, I think you do get to that point. And then I think, for everybody, the reasons why you get there are going to be different, but I think you do get to that point. And we certainly have been there. But for me, I would say two things. I never wanted to be divorced. And then number two, because of my faith, I believe that, there has to be a way out of this, even though I don't see it and I don't know what that way is. There has to be a way out of this. And because of commitment, because again, love does not make you stay. And so because of commitment, I was committed even in my misery to figure out what it is I had to do to get on the other side of this. And so, eventually, obviously, communication is what you ultimately have to do to get on the other side of that. And then again, you both have to come to that decision about being committed to each other. And then as you come to that decision about being committed to each other, you slowly work your way to that path of getting beyond that low point. But,
I would
but it's that
say-
commitment that keeps you, God, for me, and then the commitment to know divorce wasn't an option.
I would say that making the conscious decision that we're going to work through this, we're going to work. both of us had to work. And it had to be verbally said, we are both committed to working. And I can say for me personally, something that I held on to in those moments, just very long story short, there was a prophet that had told us there will be no divorce here. And in that moment, things were not that bad. You were there? You remember that, don't you?
Remember that.
Things had not gotten that bad. And I remember looking at her like, what is she talking about, honey? That prophet knew what she was talking about because things got bad.
And then it got worse.
That's what I had to hold on to. Like you said, it was
Bryce.
you're right. And in the midst of all that, yeah, Bryce was born. You're right.
It was like, what is she talking about? That's crazy. Bryce.
Well, what's interesting about, since you brought up that story, what's even more interesting is that prophet told another family member after the fact. She was like, yeah, they was looking so miserable. I didn't want to tell them what else I saw because
she saw the baby.
She said she told our family member that she knew a baby was coming, but because we were looking so miserable, she didn't want to tell us that part because she didn't want to add salt to the fire, if you will. But
when we saw her next, I was visibly pregnant, and then she also shared that with us too, that she saw the baby but wasn't released to tell us in that moment that the baby was coming.
I remember our first anniversary, and everybody that was there was like, if you made it through the first year, y'all can make it through anything. And then we're about to hit year 3, and we're like, this year was much harder than the first year.
Sure.
What were y'all talking about? Like, we done said some stuff, done fought through some stuff, and we got to keep on pushing. But for me, that was really interesting. And I'm sure my last point that I would like to get to really is with blended families, since we're both a part of a blended family. We're raising one, you've raised one. What would you guys say? Not even just to keep the peace, but to keep your relationship at a good level. What is something that we could maybe practice when it comes to blended families? And I know it's different for every couple, but just some type of like advice.
For me, because I'm the one that
Advocate.
I don't want to say, I don't know how to word it, but I know I'm the one that just couldn't let go of a lot of stuff because of how I was so used to doing things. And it was very hard for me to let him be who he needed to be to the boys, and especially when it came to discipline. Not that I don't think my problem was I didn't want him to discipline. I think my problem was he didn't do things like I did them. And he didn't say the things that I would say, and he wouldn't cater to them the way I would cater to them, or the way my parents would, because they played a big factor in that too. And so I would get frustrated and be like, you know what, never mind, I'll do it. Or you know what, never mind, I'll just have my parents do it.
Even once you were married?
Oh yeah. It went well into the marriage.
Okay.
It took well into the marriage. Yeah, and I can admit now that was my struggle. Don't do me. That was my struggle. Don't act like that. Don't be like that.
I didn't even act like anything.
Don't be like that.
You said it.
Because I can admit
I'm
what
glad
it
you can.
was.
You can now.
I know. And it's hard to admit something when you're in it because you still feel like you still feel validated. Hold on. Wait. Pause for a second. B period did not give his perspective on blended families. I gave mine. B period did not give his.
My perspective on blended families.
Okay.
I'm not opposed to blended families. What I would say is, I think we need to have more conversations about what that looks like prior to committing to blended families. And then we have to first understand what our concept of what that looks like is. And then we have to hold each other accountable for whatever decisions we make about that. Because, truth be told, the blended family is a falsehood. It's just a family. And so if you're going to if you're going to get married to someone and you're bringing your kids and all of that jazz, then we have to stop talking about it being blended and we have to just call it a family. Because there comes a point in time where it's all you do is you call each other moms and dads and sons and daughters. Nobody says stepdads and all that kind of stuff a lot. You don't really hear those kind of terminologies anymore. And so we have to, be real with each other and hold each other accountable to the decisions that we make, realizing that we just can't keep yours and mine anymore. That's a falsehood. I'm not saying you should leave someone because of it after you get married, because again, I don't believe in divorce. But recognize that that's going to be a big battle. It's going to be a big point of contention, especially for a man who's being brought into a woman whose kids that he has to try and manage when she's putting up roadblocks in front of him. That's going to cause problems. So you need to deal with that quickly, and that woman has to give up. You decided to marry him, right? So you have to be ready to give up whatever boundaries you thought you should have prior to the I do. All those boundaries are over once I do says. And that should be it. I know that's easier said than done. In my experience, it was a whole lot easier said than done. And as she has admitted, it was
It's tough.
it was a
It's
challenge
tough.
beyond what she even tried to describe. So her description don't even give it justice. But we'll leave that to the side.
Don't act like that.
Oh, I'm acting. There's no acting involved here. This is the truth, buddy. So, but that being said, I think the blended concept, I think we just have to get rid of that. It's no different when you adopt a child. You don't go, this is my blended family. No, you say that's my son. You say that's my daughter. And in adoption, there's no blood in there, and so it's the same concept. And then I think that's what you have to really grab hold to, so that the two of you can move together properly.
Now, had you said that early on, we might have.
No.
It would have resonated, and I'd be like, you know what?
No.
It makes a lot of sense.
A lot of sense, man.
No. I didn't.
What, the 19 years?
No.
And the kids are now grown. Now you say it.
This is due to growth. This is due to maturation.
Okay.
This is the relationship's final form, if you will.
Taking a lot. Taking a lot to get here, buddy.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for being an example of a beautiful love story. It's still being written, but I thank you guys for letting us ask the questions to get the advice, and to see what a successful marriage is, even through its own challenges. So thank you for this conversation and helping those, especially us, we're young and we're married. And there's things that we're figuring out as we go, which our marriage is our marriage, but it definitely helps to hear, especially from someone that we hold near and dear to our hearts. Okay. So you don't even like y'all. So thank you guys so much. Once again, guys, don't forget, this is Wisdom Podcast. Go ahead, like and subscribe.
Before you do that, can you go ahead and give them a second to shout out their podcasts?
Absolutely. I'll do it.
Go ahead.
So I am the Adoption Journey podcast, where we talk about all things adoption. I interview adoptees, adoptive parents, birth parents, the whole adoption triad. Check me out every place that you watch your podcast.
Or listen.
Everywhere. I'm everywhere.
My podcast is called The Brother with Questions. and we talk about whatever is going on, man. We interview people, and I discuss any and every topic that is in the news and offer my uh, different opinion. That's what I'm going to call it, different opinion. But yeah, a brother with questions. YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram,
Everywhere.
Castbox, Spotify.
All the things. We're everywhere.
Said, guys, thank you for tuning in to our part two.
What do you need?
Y'all can talk about this later. Our baby's calling. We got life to handle now. But thank you guys so much. We appreciate you guys. Until next time, wisdom.